I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Algonac Board of Education for March 26, 2018 at 7 p.m. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And a roll call, please.
Andrew Goulet,
Here.
Charles Pasatella, Heidi Campbell, Ray Priviloff,
Here.
Heather O'Neill Roberts, Sharon Stiltner here, Philip Clark.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Recognitions and presentations. Mr. Latos.
Yep. Back in December, when it was when we were going through my evaluation, we had discussed some of the things that came up were how we keep up with policies here in the district and kind of what my role in that was. And at that time, we had talked about, as all of you know, our policy book is through MASB and has been for quite some time. And what we kind of, as we investigated a little bit, we found out MASB we're not getting policies because it sounds like they're kind of getting out of the business, so to speak. And so our only other way to keep up on that is to rely on, being up on current events, and which is fine. But when you do something like that, you are put yourself in a position where you can miss some things. And so that evening we talked about Neola and talked about finding out some information about them. So we've traded some phone calls back and forth, and I think now we're at a point where we need to have them come out and kind of give it to you firsthand, because my interpretation of it might not be the same. And I kind of wanted to talk because we know that there's a process when anytime you switch any of these policies or switch a provider, there's going to be a procedure and a process involved. So we asked Neola to come out and share some of that information with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Wayne Peters and Wayne Wright, and they will give you some information. So gentlemen.
It's okay, I'm going to work off the corner of this table.
Sure.
And then when I'm done, I'll take a look at the stuff. My name is Wayne Peters, and I've been with Neola for 19 years. And before that, I was a superintendent for 24 years. So I'm an old guy. Neola, I thought I'd just give you how we got here.
Sure.
Neola long ago stood for Northeast Ohio Learning Associates. The company started about 40 years ago in Ohio. We are now in 7 states, so it's kind of lost to Ohio. It's like Kentucky Fried Chicken became KFC. It's just Neola now. And we are in 7 states, and we represent, I believe now, 506 Michigan districts. About 8 years ago, as you mentioned, MASB, which also had a service, dropped theirs and merged, as far as policy, merged into Neola. So you could have called MASB today and asked, and it would be somebody like us in the same materials show up to talk to you. So we have, like I say, 500 in Michigan, and we have close to 1,600 districts in 7 states. So that's about 10% of the country. And I don't think we're expanding much further, but we've got these states pretty well covered. If you've been on the school board for any length of time, you have probably noticed a difference in policy. Whereas 20 years ago, your policy book was totally an expression of what you wanted for your schools. And now more and more, the state and especially the federal government, at least in half of the policies, tell you you have to have a policy, it has to have these certain things in it, you have to adopt it by a certain time, and then we're going to audit it down the road to make sure you have it. Now fortunately the other half, and they tend to be things like discrimination, harassment, sexual violence. I'm sure there will be something new in weapons come out if you've asked in the last couple of months. Family medical leave. In other words, nationwide things, healthcare, stuff like that. So those, I'm sorry to say, a lot of the decisions have been taken away from you, and your policies have to say certain things. And like you said, there's a big chance you would miss something, and then you would fail an audit, or even worse, you'd give somebody grounds to sue you. But fortunately, the other half of the policy issues are more local in nature, and they're still in your hands. But that's kind of how the company grew, was because it just got worse and worse as far as, you know, what we call school reform. Everybody got into it. It's pretty hard for any one person like yourself to catch up on that. Being in 7 states, we have 7 law firms, 1 for each state, and because sometimes things start in another state and they eventually spread to Michigan. We also have an 8th law firm in Washington, D.C. that watches what's coming out of the courts, Congress, and the worst offenders the last few years are the federal agencies. So many of your policies come out of either U.S. Department of Education, U.S. Department of Labor, if it has to do with employment, or the Justice Department Office of Civil Rights, which is all the harassment, discrimination, stuff like that. So, we see no end to it. So I'm sure you might resent that a lot of those decisions have been taken away from you, but I don't know any way to turn that around. By the way, I'm going to open it up for questions when I say my little speech, but if you have a question while I'm talking, please, raise your hand or call on me. I thought I would describe the process. We have a set of what we call templates that are prepared by our attorneys. Our law firm in Michigan is the Varnum Law Firm in Grand Rapids, and they've got like 4 other offices. You might hear them advertised on WJR in the morning. And so they prepare the templates, which have all the things that you're required to do by law. And then within that, there are choices. The law has left you some flexibility to make different choices. And if I may, I'm going to send stuff around this way. You just ask me. So what I did is I took a set of one section of templates. This is the 0 section, which is the board's bylaws for themselves. Your meetings, your elections, your officers' responsibilities, stuff like that. And so on the top of this is the raw template as a district saw it. And then underneath is, I just finished a book recently for Grand Blanc, and underneath is how the same section looks when all the things you didn't choose are thrown out, and it's all cleaned up. It's got your name on each page now. And so this shows you from raw template to a cleaned up version of what you saw. So I'll just start that around just to. There are 10 sections in the policies. The 0 is your rules for yourself, and the other 9 sections are your rules for everybody else that works with you, and the various publics that you deal with, from parents to other governments and things like that. I have here the whole Grand Blanc book, minus the 0 section that I put in there. And I don't want to frighten you because you don't have to carry this around. This is usually a pretty temporary stage of the process because most districts try to get to our online version, which has a search engine in it. And so all this could be carried on your tablet or your laptop. So it only looks like this at a certain point until you go online, which is a different product. There's a different charge for that. But I wanted you to, if you get a chance, look at the first page of each section. I just wanted you to see how comprehensive it is. Having so many clients and so many law firms, we pretty much catch everything more than anybody in one district could do. Now, Wainwright is actually the associate for this area. And when we first set up this date for tonight, he was due to be drafting in a district up near Flint. And so I'm the one that prepared for this. Then we found out over the weekend his conflict resolved itself, and he was free tonight. So I said, come on. So I'm going to do the talking right now just because I've, kind of organized it. But Wayne will be your associate. I suppose if he was ever sick or for some reason couldn't get here, then I would be the backup area. I tend to work more in Oakland and Macomb County. So we would I generally recommend starting with the board section, the zero section, because who but you can make your rules for yourself. And that's the place to start. And so you would decide how many people you wanted to be on this. It could be the whole board, the subcommittee, a mixture of board and administrators, whatever. Although for zero, I think it should be you. And so we go through, and of course, all the stuff you're required by law to do is in there. But then you'll come to some of these choices. And for the person that's looking through that book right now, choices are a paragraph that has brackets out on the left-hand margin. Now, even in the brackets, nothing there would be illegal. We would never show you anything that wasn't legal to pick. But you will not pick everything. You know, sometimes there's a option 1, 2, or 3, and you only have to pick one. And it's the one that best describes how you want it to be in outline. So anyway, that's what the template looks like, and we get materials for everybody. Now I know everything is digital and technology today, but we have found an experience. Paper is still the best way to do this. When you're meeting with 7 or 8 people, all of whom have different ideas, and there's discussion. And plus, the associate has to be free to talk to you, answer your questions, and you just can't be tied to the keyboard at the same time. So this is the only stage where we have to rely on paper. But then as soon as it gets on our server, everything's electronic. So, yes, sir.
How often do we revisit all this? So we go through and we set it. Is it annual or semi-annual?
I'm not laughing, it's not funny, but there's so much going on. This is a real moving target.
Yeah.
There's so much coming out of the courts and legislation, and those federal agencies especially. We update our materials twice a year. And I'll show you what that looks like. Next one here. This is an update, twice a year. You get this mailed to you, and then Wayne would contact you for a follow-up meeting, generally up to 2 hours, or, I mean, he'll stay as long as to answer your questions. But this is an update. This is pretty typical. There's an overview in the yellow pages. There is some green sheets, which are alerts from our various law firms, maybe related to something in the book, maybe just something that's shown up and really won't become a policy matter for another year or something. There's a law that's going to go into effect in the fall of 1920 that has a penalty for both a school employee and the district as a whole if the person has anything to do with assisting a kid in getting an abortion. So we have a policy out now, so you have time to look at it and talk to your groups, but you don't have to have it adopted until the start of the 1920 school year. By the way, the penalty for any employee that, and we don't know what the word assist means, it hasn't been tested before. But we would think that
That one
if a
aborted.
child getting an abortion, it would be literature, counseling, taking them to a clinic, something overt like that. The penalty for a school employee is 3%, at least 3% of their annual salary deducted from them and returned to the state. The penalty for a district that doesn't adopt a policy by the start of the 1920 school year is $100,000 in state aid deducted and returned to the state. So there's really no teeth in it. So there's a case where the law's been passed, but it hasn't been laid effect. So the green sheets are alerts from our attorneys. Changes to policy are in white. Changes to guidelines, that's another product you might be interested in after we do the policies. And so you get these in the mail, followed up by a visit from us twice a year. But you can call us anytime during the year. This is not a twice a year relationship. We are on call year round. And you can amend the policies or add things to them or delete them anytime during the year. And we'll have it all done and cleaned up. If you're online, it's done within a matter of days. If it's putting out replacement pages for your manuals, that takes a couple less time.
Let me ask you something. So, twice a year we get this update. From time to time, if the legislature in their infinite wisdom passes the laws quickly, like what we were talking about before, just on every week or every couple of weeks, whatever, do we receive those updates?
We do a special.
Special?
There's no charge for it. There's a special for the built-in twice a year update.
Right.
Most of that goes to the attorneys, not so much to us. But if there's I'm trying to think of a good example. Well, the stuff that came out last year, the 7 things you have to consider before you suspend or expel a kid, or the legislation's version on seclusion and restraint, which overlaid about a 10-year-old state board guideline on the same
Right.
time. Those had a pretty short timeline. So if we could not quickly get them into the next scheduled update, we'd do a special. There's no charge for that. And, so sometimes they don't realize what it's like getting things done in a district. They say pass it and then we want you to adopt it within a month of that, not realizing how hard it is to do something. But there's a couple other things I just wanted to show you. We do, I just took one policy here, which has guidelines generated from them. The policy's in white. There's 2 guidelines and they're in different colors. Just to say, and just to show you the difference between them. Policy level is the board kind of setting the parameters around an issue, whether it's attendance or discipline or something like that. Then the day-to-day nuts and bolts details are in guidelines. Guidelines don't have to be publicly adopted at 2 meetings. They can be changed today and begin to use tomorrow or as soon as you inform the stakeholders. Although your policies will always be tied to your guidelines will be tied to your policies, but they will just be details that are a little picky-unity to be part of the policy.
Currently ours, we call it the rule. So there's the
Rules,
policy and then there's
sure.
the rule,
Sure.
which can be done administratively. The board doesn't even have to have anything to do with that. The administration can figure those things out. That's the case here
I don't know
too.
how we came up with our name as guidelines, but
Right.
it's the same thing you're talking
Right,
about.
okay.
And another thing we do, we have a student handbook, which not everybody takes it, but we update it every year. And so you will get this. The updates come out usually in September or February or March. And then a little later in the spring, you get a packet from us that has the student handbook, any changes during the past year. And so whether or not you use ours or not, you have a student handbook, I assume. And sometime in the spring, you're going to send it out to reprint for next school year. So if there's been a change in something like search and seizure, or like I said, probably very soon we're going to have something on weapons. That's new. The same attorneys prepare a paragraph to go in your student handbook. And you're free to use that even if you haven't bought our handbook. And you also get in the spring special a list of all the annual notices that you have to give to somebody by law. Employees, parents, kids, other governments, whatever. That generally changes a little bit every year. The other thing we send you, if it's changed, is at various places in school, you have these sets of laminated posters dealing with minimum wage and family medical leave and stuff like that. They're kind of expensive. You probably only buy those every 3 or 5 years or something. If something has come along in the law that requires a change in posters, we give you a legally compliant poster that you can laminate and use until the next time you buy the commercial sets of laminated ones. So we give you those. We try to give you everything that's going to spin off of a change. If it's letters to somebody, checklists, evaluation instruments, whatever. Notices that have to be posted. You have to post a notice in the gym, in locker rooms about the dangers of steroids and performance enhancing compounds. We'll provide you the poster for that. So this is just, and again, I would say just look at a couple pages and see how comprehensive it was. When I was working, I thought we had a pretty comprehensive one. I retired from college in Oakland County. But this put out a change. It's just, there's about several pages just in the there.
You wanted us to look at the front page of each section.
So anyway, Wayne will come and meet with whoever you choose to sit at the table. take your choices and turn them into, take the options that are offered and turn them into your choices. We send it back to the company, it's cleaned up, and it comes back looking like that one, that had Grand Blanks finished product. So there's 10 sections. I'm often asked, how long does this take? I did one time in 5 months because the board was really pressing to get it done. They got an overbook and it was terribly out of date. I would say more likely it's about a school year, 10 to 12 months. It all depends on how often the people on your committee care to meet.
Wayne, talk a little bit more about that process, how that looks. Is that this group getting together, and then once we have a section done, it maybe goes, we call in Wayne, or is there, what's?
No, I'll be there.
Okay. Okay.
No, the associate will be there.
Sitting right there,
Because
yeah.
there are things that need to be explained.
Yeah.
A lot of these policies, there's a story behind it as to why the legislature did something.
Okay.
And without taking a lot of extra time, sometimes it's worthwhile to know how this policy got, or how this law got passed. Usually it's because somebody did the comments.
Yep.
No, we sit with it through the whole thing. And,
You take it in a couple chunks logically, or do you just try and knock it all out?
well, we try to do the section. The sections are different sizes.
It's them.
Generally, you can do one per night. I would say the one on curriculum and the one on students might take 1.5 sessions. Just because they're,
Right.
that's where a lot of your problems come from, because it brings the students involved in it. But, so that's how we turn a draft into a finished product. Any meetings, I might mention, with the associate under Michigan's Open Meetings Act are posted and open to the public, which means you can't be terribly candid. You have to watch what you say. And, but that's, the Open Meetings Act now says, in place decisions are being made. That will be posted and open to the public. So, again, 20, 30 years ago, it was common in a lot of districts that the real decisions were made in committees, which were never open to the public. And the public board meeting was just kind of a rubber stamp. And I'm sure the public and reporters said, what just happened? With no discussion, this, and this got passed. Well, it had all been decided outside of the public, but you can't do that. So they're posted and open to the public. Believe me, anybody that comes in to watch you draft policy will probably never come back a second time.
Right.
Like watching fingers.
We did this, the last time we did this for all of our new board members here that weren't here in 2002, that was the last time we did this. And what we did was we had a committee of 3, because you can't have more than that to have a quorum of the whole board. So we had a committee of 3 that went through our policy book section by section. And each one of those 3 people got a copy of the section, or we all had the big book, and went through that section. And the 3 of them sat down and said, I like this, I don't like, and compared notes and whatever, and finished doing the markups on that section. When we got all done, we brought the whole book to the board and said, these are all the things that some stuff was obsolete and outdated and not necessary. Some stuff needed to be updated and so on and so forth. So, I mean, that.
You can't do it quite that way anymore.
Right.
Because of the Open Meetings Act. Because board members that were not on that 3-member committee and all the public would not know what choices you could have chosen but didn't.
Right.
And by the time it got to a public meeting, it had already been trimmed down somewhat, but who knew? And so that's part of the reason behind Michigan's Open Meeting Act.
Right.
By making every stage of the process open to the public, clearly show that you're not trying to hide anything. And now, when you get into some of the other sections, I always recommend the board should at least be involved in 3 sections. The 0 that's going around, the 1,000, which is your relationship between the superintendent and yourself, and 9,000 is your relationship with all your various other groups that interface with the school. Other schools, businesses, ISD, public, boosters and PTOs, stuff like that. So those three, I think, are essential for the board to have their hand on the whole thing. You get into other sections like curriculum or students, you may want some other people sitting at the table, principals or curriculum director or whatever, and that's fine. We'll prepare materials for whoever you want. You decide who to bring to your side of the table. But again, it'll all be open and
Right.
everybody will get the sausage being made as it is.
When, so assuming it takes a school year, is there a ideal time to start the process? I mean, a particular month, or is it just whenever you're ready to jump in, it's?
Whenever you want to. We generally, we ask you to figure out, let's say at the policy, we'll talk about guidelines right now. That might be some different people, but you decide what is the most number of people that are already at the table
Okay.
and need their own materials, and that's how many we order. And the associate keeps one or two that are sent to his house, but they're all, others are shipped right here. And we encourage that when you're going to do a section, you hand it out to the board a week or two early, so they have a chance to look it over.
Sure.
Right.
Maybe even make some marginal notes. I'd like to check this option or this option, or I don't want this one. And then when we do meet, it goes faster, because it's not strange to you. You might have a chance to look at it. But,
Wayne, in the context when we have the electronic
Yeah.
version,
Yes.
is that something we can post out on our website with links so that, anyone in the community could get in and
Well,
see the?
Okay, the one thing that's not on yours is the search engine. That's the beauty of ours. You got the price sheets, I assume that was in the information the company sent at that time. The electronic is usually the last thing that the customers buy, kind of a prom product, if you will. And what happens is our tech person talks with your tech person. And what you do is you create two paths to your policies. One would be putting an icon on your normal web page that says, you'd have drop-down menu that would say board and
Right.
policies. And that's how you get there. But the other way is you would just type in www.neola.com/Algonac, Michigan. And that would be a way to get to the same thing without going through your, let's say your web page is under repair or something, or there's two ways to get to it. And but the search engine is great. Everything that we've done, policies, guidelines, with guidelines you get a book of about 300 forms, sample letters, whatever you need, posters, whatever I said. And again, the federal stuff, you need to have theirs. I mean, it's the forms are as legally required as the policy and the guideline. They have to be a certain way to survive an audit, or to not give somebody an opening to sue you. Of course, anybody can sue you. It only costs $50, $75 to file a suit. If there is a warranty with all of our products, and that is if you are cited on an audit, or you are sued because you relied on our language, the price for the policies is $10,000. If necessary, Barnum's will go to court and spend $10,000 defending you on that language. It's very rare that there's even a lawsuit, and I don't know in my 19 years of one that ever lost, because they vet this stuff so carefully. I don't know if the ones you were looking through, but you look at 2260, which is a discrimination law, if you would. And at the end, it complies with like 15 state and federal laws. So the attorneys have crafted it very carefully to solve all those laws. In fact, when you get to those, you say, please don't wordsmith it. You could wordsmith it right out of the laws. But anyway, if you relied on our advice and it became a problem, we spend the money that you spend on us to go defend it. And of course, you still get to keep the policies. But it's I don't know, an item where we had a superintendent of the UP. One of the things about Open Meetings Act is people have the right to videotape or record a meeting. The policy said what they should contact the superintendent as to where they're going to be set up, so that there's not a distraction. The superintendent in this district took that to mean if they didn't contact me ahead of time, I'm not letting them come. So it wasn't that the wording was wrong, it was just the interpretation of it. And I think we came up with a little settlement for that district. But otherwise, I've never known a client who successfully sued because they trusted us.
Now, you talked about having an office in Washington to cover
Yes.
the
And
DOJ and the
law-
Congress and the labor. Do you have somebody in Lansing?
Yes. Well, it's Barnum, their home office is in Grand Rapids. If you've ever been to the Amway for a conference, on the north end, Michigan Avenue crosses the river, and on the west bank is this tall, I think it's 17-story building. It's got a kind of an Art Deco scrolled roof, looks nice at night in the eye. That's their main office. Then they have 4 or 5 other offices in Detroit, Lansing, other places. But
When you, so again, going back to section by section takes a year, when does it become your policy? Do you
Okay.
adopt all at the end, or do you do it by section, or?
when we processed it, including any last-minute thoughts or changes, and it's ready to take it, you have to take it to 2 meetings. And they're called, you know, a lot of U.S. law comes from Old English law, and it's called a first and second reading.
Okay.
But you don't have to actually read them. That comes from Old England, where most of the population was illiterate, and if the king passed a new law, he actually sent readers from town to town who stood up on a tree stump and read the law to the people. That's where that word reading comes from. Otherwise, how would they know what was in it? But, so a better word would be first and second consideration. So you have it on the agenda of 2 successive meetings. And the night that you have the second reading and adopt it, that's the night that you jump from the old book to the new. Legally.
And that's done all at the end, or is that done section by section, or?
Well, I'll tell you why it's done at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what you could do is if you had an urgent need, like an upcoming audit, you could put a finished section online, but just realize it would not have the search engine, it wouldn't have fit in indexes or table of contents, because we don't see the whole picture yet. So we only do the search engine, the table, the index, and the glossary once.
Okay.
And you have all sections done.
Okay.
Well, we have, if you have a legitimate need, we put individual sections
Okay.
up to see. It's just, you know what I mean?
Yep, I
The
do.
search box wouldn't work.
But we could put them up, so we do section 0 and we put that one up, no search engine. We put section 1 up behind it, still no search engine. When we put section 10 up,
And adopt, yeah.
with that and adopt it and whatever, then you can turn the search engine on, if we wanted to do it
Yep.
section by
Take about a
section.
week.
Okay, then the, doing it, if, you know, if the board were to consider wanting to do it that way, would it be, are there things that, like in one section would cross-reference to another, something in a different section, like in our old book, or to
Not till we
conflict
saw
with?
the entirety.
Okay,
No, we don't try to, I will tell you, if you had an old MASB book, so much has changed since then. There's probably 200 policies have changed since then, because you know what's going on. Can I just take a minute? I wanted to show you how the online,
Sure.
what it looks like. And, yeah, this might, oh,
2064.
okay.
That's what you referenced.
Well, I just want to show them how many citations. Let me get back to the screen here. So Montrose has policies, guidelines, the forms that came with guidelines, and this, state government. If you were talking about a policy and you say, I wonder what the original law behind that said, you just go to this page, we either put in the school code number 380 point something, or if you know the public act or the original bill or something, and it will call up the complete one. So let's go back to for just policies. And let's take a look at, oh no, I don't want to do that right now. That's why I want to do that.
company. There's gotta be more than one.
No, I didn't know. There. So, let's say you want to do a manual for bus drivers. Policies, guidelines, related forms, everything that bus drivers should know. Some of these numbers have been used so much. Okay. Okay, it's not captured in any policy, guideline, form, maybe something in the student handbook, if one person said put student handbook in there. And then you hit on any of those, and it displays the text. So I'm going to show you how it jumps between, let's take one that I know has. Suspension and expulsion. Okay. Now somewhere within this text will be references to other policies. Okay, here's one of the references, 5611. Get that, and get 5611 will come. So then let's see if there's anything else. Well, that was very short. I won't be waiting this. I'm just trying to show you how it jumps around. This is federal. It's long, very long, but you gotta have it. So there's some there. Now, the public can read this, and they can print it off. They just can't change it, can't get in. Changes only come when you tell the company, here's how we want it. So, it's transparent without being easy to hack. Try to run along and, So anyway, I think you get the idea. It's very, secretaries love it. I had several clients who the secretary just kind of worked on the boss to say, please buy this for me, so I'm not spending half the day researching something. What else can I?
So we get through the initial
Yeah.
set of policies
Yeah.
and everything, and now we're 6 months later, let's go into your semi-annual.
Right.
Is there a scenario where new policies come in by default, or does nothing change from there unless we take action?
No,
They
that's
have
it.
to-
The board has to adopt. Yeah.
Do most boards that you work with have a practice of twice a year in their meetings, they go through and adopt the deltas?
Yeah, now I meet with a variety of, I either sometimes meet with the whole board, either in a open meeting, but before the regular board meeting, or as part of the board regular agenda, or a committee. In some districts, I just meet with the superintendent, that's the way they want it, and he or she takes it to the board. But, again, any meeting with me, because we're starting to make decisions, we want that choice, we don't want that option, those have to be posted and all. so there's never a hint that this is being done outside. There's an interesting story how we got to the Michigan Open Meetings Act, but I won't. It takes 5 minutes and it's not worth it tonight. We'll tell you at some point.
So is this, when you adopt the book, the first reading, second reading, is that new? When did that start?
No, you've always had to in Michigan. You always have to have 2 readings to
Okay.
adopt, change, rescind policy. Even though there might have been some secretive committee meetings before that, when it got to the public meeting, that's had to be public for as long as I can remember.
That'd be like information item
Yeah,
one.
because, well, the way
second
our
one
meetings work,
adopted.
we work our meetings is, we have a, time permitting, and this would be something where it would permit, we have it this month as an action, as an information item, and next month as an action
We do
item.
that, yeah.
So like the things on our agenda tonight that are action items were information items last month.
Okay,
Tonight's information items will be action items next month.
so yours would really affect 3 meetings, the information and then the first and second reading.
Well, information could be counted as a reading.
It could, yeah.
So information this month, adopt it next
What we
month.
suggest is, okay, it's going to be on your agenda for information.
Right.
But you would have a motion on that agenda. We're presenting the policy book for first reading.
Oh, okay.
Have a copy of.
So it'd be,
what you're talking
yeah, so
about
it'd be 3 meetings
on
if
the
you're doing
table.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, if you don't want to do that motion at the information meeting, then we're really talking about spreading it over 3 meetings. But you do have to have in the minutes a formal first reading and second reading motion. But the adoption date can be, 1 minute after the second reading.
Right. Other questions at all?
You mentioned that there are new board members since the last time you did this.
Yes.
This is a great in-service for new board members. Even if you've been on a board a long time, you will walk away from this process saying, I never knew this, or at least I never knew how we got to this law in Michigan. And some stories are kind of interesting to tell, but you will, I guarantee you all, you will learn things you didn't know about how we got here.
Very good.
Can I check 3 things with you?
Oh, sure.
First of all, I want to give you my card and tell you a little bit about myself. I've only been with the company for about 6 months, but that doesn't mean I'm not new to Neola. I was the superintendent for 14 months, and prior to that, 14 years, you're right. Get it right. And before that, I was assistant superintendent and worked in central office for 8 years. So I spent a lot of time dealing with Neola. Since 1995, we've been dealing with it and doing the policy work. And to things beyond my control, I'm back in this chair of a superintendency right now for 6 months. So that's why Wayne's helping me out here with this. And I am dealing with companies or with different districts that are drafting policy. Matter of fact, the question was asked, how long is it going to take? We've been drafting policy the last Monday of every month. That's where I was scheduled to be tonight, but they ended up having to change their meeting for tonight. So it's going to, we started November. We're planning to finish by the end of June this year. So that will be how long it took this district to go through adopting all the policies. It seems like many years we get a new special update in May or something of that nature. Last year was restraint and seclusion. Lieutenant Governor Calley came out going over this policy for a long period of time, put it out, we had to adopt it by August. A few years ago, it was the bullying policy that came out late. We got it in May, we had to adopt it by the end of the summer. And we're seeing a lot of that with the legislation, the way it's being acted these days. It used to be that 20 years ago, you didn't see a whole lot of legislation taking place for education. Now the agenda is full with education agenda stuff. So that's why one of the things, there's so many changes every year. You're getting an update about that twice a year. If you have any more questions,
Very good. Do you have price sheets for us, or?
Jana has them, yeah.
Okay.
I can send out too.
A lot of your neighbors are with Neola. I would encourage you to call the superintendent or somebody there, maybe the board members, and just ask them how they like our service. Got East China, Anchor Bay, Mount Clemens, L'Anse Cruz.
K-Pac, Croslex.
Yeah.
So, you know, and some we've had for many years. So I feel comfortable with anything they told me.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Got Port Huron. I'm looking on their website.
Oh, gotcha.
Who they,
Okay, next up, we have
Midland.
Jackie Hanton. Jackie comes to us from the Community Foundation and here tonight to discuss the Education Enrichment Fund. Jackie? Sure.
I appreciate you guys taking the time this evening to have the Community Foundation come in and present. Obviously, we've been working with the Algonac School Board for many years, and we'll get into that. I'd like to start the presentation out with just a little bit of information about the Community Foundation currently, some of our priority areas, things that we're doing, talk about your fund, and then we're going to end this evening by talking about one of the big events we have coming up this summer called the Big Give. And this is really hard to see on the screen, so I'll kind of go over this. But what I'd like to do is capture 10 things that we did the prior year to kind of give you a little bit of a flavor of what we did back in 2017. And some of our biggest things were redefining scholarships. So if you follow the Community Foundation for the past couple of years, the first redefinition of scholarships was with our Come Home Award, attracting the talent back to our county, back into St. Clair County. And the second redefinition of scholarships is what we did this past year, which was working with what we're calling our young adult programs and really focusing on the success of the student, because as you guys are probably well-read and understand, is that the college rates, the four-year graduation rates in college, are really, they're not good. They're pretty bad. They're only about 47%. So the freshmen going into the senior coming out, only about 47% are completing their degree. And so what we've done locally is we've partnered with SC4 in order to put a program in place to help these students truly complete their degree, because what we're finding out is it's more than just the studies as why these students are not finishing their degrees. It's more likely than not some type of a financial situation that is beyond tuition and books. So our normal scholarships are supporting tuition and books, but now what we're doing is we're supporting the success of the student, and we're looking at emergencies, we're looking at daycare, we're looking at transportation, housing that is stable, and all of those different things that go together to make a successful student. And we have an actual program officer in our office that is focused completely on this program now. So that's probably one of our biggest new endeavors. We also have, we matched K-Pac library funding, and so the renovations of the library in downtown K-Pac. We also utilized our investing for SC4. So if you've been to downtown Port Huron lately, or you've read the paper about SC4, they are expanding into student housing. And there will be probably about 80 students that are brought into their newest housing, but they already have a waiting list for 180. So they know that this is a demand. This is something that the students in our county have wanted and looked for. We also partnered with the Johnson Center for Nonprofit Training. So a lot of times what we want to do is focus on the success of our nonprofits and the organizations providing those basic needs in our communities and making sure that they're successful. So we partnered for trainings to make sure that their boards, like you were doing tonight with your policies and procedures, that they know the best practices. We also celebrate our philanthropic youth. So this is probably one of our favorites. Our Youth Advisory Council has been in place since the mid-90s, and they celebrated granting out $1 million since their fund was put in place. So that was great for them. We've also run 5Ks to show our support. So as you know, and as you've probably been invited to, it's either a 5K or a golf outing seem to be the hot tickets for fundraisers. So we, of course, always encourage our board members and our staff to participate in those. We also gave away a record $2.7 million. So if you've been following the track record of the Community Foundation in the past few years, we've been steadily increasing the amount that we've given away. And we're very excited by that dollar amount this year that our donors have chosen to give back to the community. And we also expanded our team, so I touched on that a little bit. We used to be a steady team of 7, and we're now a team of 9. And we keep expanding with our programs and the needs of the community. Our strategic priorities. So a lot of times when you go in and you try to apply for a grant at the Community Foundation and it's a competitive grant, this is the process. These are the priorities that you need to fall under for our discretionary funds. And we actually are in ranking order prior years, we've had priorities, but they've not been in ranking order, but this past 3-year cycle, we have ranked them. And so community and economic development is our top focus area. Anything from your placemaking to your downtowns, waterfront development, entrepreneurism, and again, that nonprofit capacity building and support. The second is cradle to career. So this used to be what we called education, but we wanted to fine tune it a little bit and really show that we're focusing anywhere from early childhood education all the way up through, like we talked about with the Complete Your Degree program with our young adult success. And then healthy lifestyles. Actually, here in Algonac, you guys helped us kick off with the healthy lifestyles with the pilot program of taking Friday food for kids from just the elementary all the way up here through the high schools. And we really appreciate that because healthy lifestyles was new for the Community Foundation when we implemented it. We're still trying to find our best fit in this area. We also did pop-up farmers markets in the food desert areas of downtown Port Huron for a couple years. And so our board will continue to explore this and where our best fit is within the community. Our asset growth. It still kind of blows me away to look at this chart because it's only the past few years that we've really had some exponential growth. Back in 2014, we were $47 million, and just this last year in 2017, we ended at $74 million. And that's comprised of 200 different donor funds of the donors that have entrusted us with their generosity for the community. So a breakdown of the grants. Something that I like to point out with the grants, the pie chart typically follows kind of our priority area, which you would think with the discretionary funds. We also have arts and cultures that our donors support very heavily, and youth as well. But a part of the $2.7 million, only a couple $100,000 is what our grants committee actually oversees. The vast majority of our grants are actually directed by our donors. So I like to mention that a lot of times because people think that we're our discretionary funds and what you're able to apply for is in the multi-millions, but the vast majority of it is actually donor directed for us. And so the community schools, your fund. So it started in 1995 with just over $3,800. And so I want you to take a look at $3,800 and then the current balance. You guys are nearing $300,000 in this fund, which is awesome. The grants over this time frame, so not only has the fund grown, but you've also received back over $86,000. And the fund is put in place in order to support truly just kind of those programs, projects, initiatives that the school and district is putting in place. And so this next slide gives you a couple of examples of what has been funded over the years. So family night workshops, teacher program enrichment grants, iPads, teacher grants. I believe your most current cycle you tend to do now is a lot of the teacher granting. I'd like to pause here. Are there any questions about the endowment fund of the schools? The district has? And so the next one is the big give. And so by the time June 12th comes around, you are going to hate this date and have heard this date everywhere. That's our goal anyways. But really, it's truly bringing back a one-day giving rally where we're going to bring the entire community around 24 hours of online giving or in-person giving if you want to come up to the Community Foundation. We've seen the type of massive impact that these collective community giving days can have. The Community Foundation hosted Give Where You Live back in 2014, so if you remember that, this is modeled in a very similar way. So what are we going to do? We're going to engage the whole community, so really reaching out to more people and working with everyone in all the different facets of our community in St. Clair County. The benefits from the prizes in the bonus pool. So this is probably going to be the biggest incentive for all the different organizations or funds that are participating, is that we're going to have fun prizes that are either leading up to the event or on the day of, where it's, maybe it's whoever has the 100th donor gets an extra $1,000, or whoever has the first female donor or women's initiative fund likes to put out little challenges, that fund would receive an extra $1,000. So those will be announced as we work through the event. And then the bonus pool. So this is a little different than matching funds. Our bonus pool, what we hope to do is continue to grow it until the day of the event, and the organizations will receive a pro rata portion based on what they've raised that day. So the more you raise, the more you'll receive from the bonus pool. So it's kind of your incentive to continue to excite your donor base around the big give. Raise awareness and funds for your organization. So essentially it's, we're promoting, the Community Foundation is promoting the big give, you're promoting the Algonac Schools Enrichment Fund, or any of those programs and causes that are near and dear to your heart. And then tons of resources. So this is where we're going to, we've We've had one training last week, we'll have one training on Wednesday of this week, and organizations participating are walking away with a toolkit on their thumb drive with the media plans, with logos, with different ideas of how to engage their donor base. And then they have both myself and Sue Schmidt, our program development officer, sorry, Sue, have both of us to reach out to as resources the entire time as well. So past successes. So I mentioned our Give Where You Live back in 2014. There were 2 match days just before that. And combined, if you look at all 3 of those events, over $1.1 million were raised for local nonprofits just in 3 days. Those were 3 24-hour events that happened. So we're definitely looking at these past successes as something to help us this year and help the community to raise, hopefully at least 4,200 gifts. This year we have 79 organizations. In 2014 there were 70 organizations in St. Helena and St. Clair counties. And so we brought it in-house just to St. Clair County this time with 79 nonprofits participating. So what can you do? A few simple things. Start spreading the word. Hopefully if you're engaged on Facebook, you've started to see some pictures floating around or the logos or invitations to the event. Follow the nonprofit participation communication guide. So again, that's from our training. So if you are participating, we lay out exactly different dates and things that you should be doing to help keep you on track so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We also have the Big Give on June 12th, share when you give. So when you do donate to that favorite cause or nonprofit or to the school fund, certainly let the public know and invite your friends to do that as well. And then what we're really excited about is actually June 13th. So all the hard work will be done, all the fundraising will be completed, and we will have a celebration event down at the Seaway Terminal up in Port Huron, where everyone who has participated will be invited to a big party. Essentially, we'll hand out the prizes, we'll hand out the bonus pool funds, and really just celebrate what the community came together to do on the day before. Any questions?
Sounds good. Questions for Jack?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So thanks so much for coming down.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. They both asked if they could stick around after for the rest of the meeting.
I'm sure they did.
Policy.
Yeah.
Thanks
All
again,
right,
ladies.
thanks a lot.
Thank you. One final presentation tonight. Back quite some time back, we had started talking about, and actually when we were talking about some academic goals for the year, one of the things we discussed was we need to get a grip on where it is we are, good, bad, or indifferent, and so we know which direction we want to go in. I asked Ryan and Melissa and Brooke today to put together a presentation, and as you know, we went back at the beginning of the school year to start on working with NWEA again. So tonight I'm going to turn it over to them and they can give you some information.
All right, just again to go back to we requested that we be able to use NWEA this year. This came from we used the STAR kind of as something to measure our students throughout the year. Because again, the state gives us this test in the spring. We don't really get a lot of reports back until toward the end of the fall. And so we're trying to look for more information and quicker. And we also looked at the STAR. We didn't feel that the test looked like what the kids are doing now in M-STEP or SAT or PSAT. And then when we started doing some research, we compared numbers. When you're doing NWEA and STAR was thousands of kids, NWEA is millions, and we'll show you that in a second. But as you recall, for the elementary now, the new state law, the third grade reading legislation required that the administration of screening or initial assessment within the first 30 days of the school year. This required us to identify an assessment from MDE's list of approved assessments. NWEA is one of them, and again, if you look across the state of what other districts are doing, this is the primary way that most districts are measuring their students throughout the year. And our goal is to identify an assessment that would give us meaningful data, kindergarten through 11th grade, that would help teachers make instructional decisions. And Again, we're looking for consistency across the board. And once we identified the math growth assessment for use as the initial assessment in reading, it was determined we use that one, the same assessment for math. So again, when we're doing the research, this is the stuff that comes up when you're looking at NWA. There's nothing else out there that matches the number of what this is in the nation. You're looking at, they test 10+ million students annually with their math assessments. So that's almost 8,000 schools, educational partners. It's in every single one of the states. They have 4.5 billion test lab responses. It's over 141 countries worldwide. So you can see that by the sheer numbers, the data that they can provide you, because of those numbers, is going to be much more accurate, give us much better norms. What they do, jumping down there. So, there we go. So everything is measured what they call RIT scores, and I believe Brooke's going to talk a little more specifically what the RIT is. But again, it's from all this data they're able to compile from all these students that they can determine very good normative data of showing where the kids should be at each level, at each grade level. And the nice part is when new tests come along, like MSTEP or even like the new SAT, they start looking at that and then start showing, well, this is what their test score is for their RIT score. This is what that would mean for MSTEP. This is what it will mean for SAT. And they're very, relatively quick on adapting to that as a system. And again, the RIT scale will align with the state proficiency benchmarks for all 50 states. So again, looking for all this, we really felt it was really a no-brainer in bringing this back into the district as it would in replacing STAR. When we look at the test, it has 52 questions, and again, it's varied by the subject of the test. It is not timed, but we'll talk about this a little bit later. Time is recorded for each student. So you can look on that, and you can tell how much time they're putting into the effort in the test. But again, they can take as long as they need to on the test itself. Students will not have the same questions as other students in their class. And again, they have such a wealth of questions into their item system that, again, it rotates, and again, they will not have the same test. And when a question is answered right, it'll get to be a harder question. When it gets wrong, it kind of goes back down, so it kind of starts wider, and it kind of peers down, and that's where they're trying to find out where the student's at. Going from the harder to easier, and it kind of narrows it down. So the math score is not determined by the number of questions answered correctly, but instead it's based on the level of difficulty of the questions answered questions. They're looking at that level where they end up at in between.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That computer adapted.
There's 5 tenets of the math growth. There's an adaptive assessment, that's kind of what Ryan just talked about. A student answers a question, if it's right, their next question is a little bit harder. If they answer the question wrong, then it will go a little bit easier. And so they can really zero in on what level each student is at. The RIT scale is a growth of measure, really, not necessarily where they're at grade level wise, but we're really focusing on how they grow. So we can see RIT score in the fall, and then it will tell us how many they should grow, how many points they should grow when they take it in the winter, and then again in the spring. And there will be an example of that testing format in a little bit. There's normative data, just like Ryan said, it is such a huge pool that we got away from STAR testing only because it wasn't applicable to us in Algonac, really. It was such a small pool of people, but now with the larger pool, we can really see where our students are. Instructional readiness tells us where the students are ready to learn, at what level, and then the learning continuum tells us what we should teach them next. So it really helps us when we're doing intervention groups or teachers making their small groups for their classroom. The adaptive assessment, I know we keep going back to this, but that's what really makes this test special, is the ability for us to zero in, and it's very similar to the MSTEP. That's what the MSTEP does now.
Yep.
So the huge pool of questions that have been developed are similar to MSTEP questions, and the kids are able to get right to the questions that are at their level. So here's our RIT score. It is a Rosh unit, which means RIT. And I'm not exactly sure what that meant before we did this. I just took it as, okay, well, that's the score, that's what we call it. But it's independent of their age or grade of the student. So it doesn't matter if they're in second grade, they get to where they need to be and where it's at. If they're at a kindergarten level, then it will go down to there. If it's at a sixth grade level, the student, it will show that. So there's no cap or there's no minimum for where they're able to score. It reflects where they're performing, where we should start teaching them, and it's equal interval, meaning regardless of grade level, it's all the same. So in my building, it gets a little bit tricky because there's a kindergarten through second grade test, and then there's a second grade through fifth grade test for us. So when we start testing in second through fifth grade, every second through fifth grader gets the same types of questions to begin with, and then it kind of goes from there. So it gets a little bit hard for the younger kids who may not be as proficient readers at that time. And this just measures for us how tall the student is. So kind of think of it as, they're growing as people, but we're also able to use their RIT score to see how they're all growing as students also. And why we need this data? Well, it was super important for us to get this so we could know how to appropriately plan our classroom instruction, drive our instruction building-wide, have valid data so we can see where we're at and where we really need to get to in the future.
Okay, so this is a sample of what a classroom would look like. And I just pulled this off as a sample because of course we can't show student names on this, but I want to show you kind of what the teachers would look at. So they have their overall RIT, where they should see. And so in this classroom, at grade level are just these two students, and you can see how they are separating them all. From there, I'll take you into another slide that I'll show you in just a minute, but you can really look at the standard deviation, and this was really helpful for our teachers because if it's between 0 and 10, they're saying that in that particular category, whole group instruction would benefit that group of students. They're all about at the same level, so you could just start rating with whole group instruction. However, if the standard deviation of error was between 10 and 14, it's kind of a teacher's choice. Whole group could still benefit, but you may need to pull a couple of small group sections. They don't delineate, but however, if the deviation is more than 14 points, you have to do differentiated instruction. Your kids are too far apart in whatever curriculum strand that you're trying to teach to do it a whole group instruction. So you really do have to start to narrow that focus because these 6 kids need something different than these 6 kids and these 6 kids. So that's an overall at a glance as you can see. So we talk about normative data, and that's really talking about the grade level norms. Part of what we wanted to do here in Algonac is our state test has been changing year to year to year, and so we feel like there's this constant target, and are we getting our kids where they need to get to as compared to who? And so the thing that NWA brings in is it brings in a national norm with all of these kids. Are we that far off? And is it a grade level? Is it a curriculum issue? Are we better off than we think we are? Where are we on a national scale with our kids? Are they really behind? Are they where they need to be? Or are we ahead in certain areas? So that's really what we want to see with NWEA is to progress. How are we doing here in Algonac relative to other kids in the nation? Not just this little pocket of Michigan, but relative to the bigger picture. And of course, looking at our county as well. But so it provides, NWEA changes its norms every 3 years. So it takes all of this testing and it'll redo the norms to make sure, so if the nation as a whole, if the norms have gone up, it'll reflect that. If the testing has gone down, it'll reflect that. They typically grow by little amounts each year. Again, NWEA provides the instructional level for students. So it'll show us, when we pull it up, it'll show us, here's where your students are at instructionally, this is where you need to start from. It'll show what comes next, and it'll also show what they should have already mastered. But the score they give you is meant to be used to to drive instruction. It's not, this is what they know, this is where they're at, and this is where you should start with your instruction in certain categories. So they say ready for instruction today. We know it really means the Roush unit, but this is a great way to look at it. So if this student was a 195 on the RIT, this is the, in literature, key ideas and details, that's one of the subgroupings you can pull up, and it'll detail out, this is where they are instructionally, and these are some of the things that they're going to need. Within NWEA, you can click in and out of these, where it'll bring it into deeper detail. It'll also pull up kids that have the same RIT scores and group them for you. So these 5 kids need this area, where these 4 kids are actually above them. So it starts to group the kids for teachers to help see where that differentiated instruction is needed, which is really wonderful. So where are we currently? That's where you want to know. We've only given the test twice, in the fall and the winter so far, and I will say we've made a few mistakes in the way we proctored. So in kindergarten, let me say where Hillside made a mistake. So kindergarten at the beginning of the year, we're picking up the mice as telephones and trying to talk into them. And so we're like, oh my gosh, they're supposed to listen to the test on headphones and do it themselves. And we're like, they were struggling. So we really had it more one-on-one, where we were reading the questions and then the kid was pointing to the answer, and we were, clicking and helping them through. But what we found is when we went in mid-year, where we said we had got them on computers between then and now they're doing it completely on their own. That's a different skill. And so we need to start by doing it that way from the get-go. If it's low, it's low, but that's where they're at. So that was our mistake, and I know Brooke and Ryan will talk about their different things. But as you can see, if we look at first right here, in the fall, let's see it up here. 161 was the mean RIT. In the winter, they grew to 168. You can see the standard deviation says that for the most part, whole group instruction is going to be okay. In the median, the norm for the district right now was around 170. So, like, we are within a couple points here. Right here for winter, we're right on 152.9. So you can see which each class level, that's where it goes. And again, if you break it down into foundational skills, you can see the deviations and where we need to go. The teachers will break that down by classes even more, so one class might look different than another class. What we found when we went through this all together, we had a day-to-day this past month where all 3 levels met together, and we really talked about what does our programming look like. We found that we were right on track in a lot of the areas. There's a couple grade levels we had concerns with. And the things that we thought we really needed to focus on, we were really looking at informational text. It's actually one of our strengths when we look at what we've been doing according to our testing. So there's a lot of interesting things that came out of that data meeting, but what we found is we're pretty close to the normative data of the nation, within a point either over or under. So we didn't find any that we were staggering, especially at the elementary levels. So that was encouraging. Definitely some areas we need to tighten up, but we're on the right track.
Are the mean and medians specific to our district, or is that a national?
The mean and median, here, this is specific to our district. The normative data, that other chart that we had up there is what we would compare it to, and it's right here. So, and it breaks it down. Can you find the normative data slide? Go back a few. Oh, it's right there. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, but the chart's not showing up. I don't know why it's not showing up on there. But if I bring this up here, and I'll pass this around and I can get a copy of this to you. In the beginning of the year, it'll give us our median normative national data here for each grade level, mid-year, and end of year. So I can get that chart for you. So that's what we were looking at. We're saying, what is mid-year in kindergarten? What's the normative data, and what's the standard deviation? And we were like right on track. I think theirs is, what was it? It was
160 at the beginning for first.
Oh, yeah, so mid-year is 171. And so if you look at winter of first grade, we are at, what's it say, 168? So we're within a few points.
I can't see that.
You know, and mid-year of kindergarten is 151, and we are at 152.9. So,
Printouts of all this?
yes, I can print it out for you, absolutely. So that's what we were looking at to see where are we falling short? Is our standard deviation aligned with most of the nations? Are we right where we need to be, or are we way off other places? So I will definitely, I'll send this PowerPoint to
Yep.
Alan, you can just send it around, because for whatever reason, the slides aren't, the second pieces are. So I'll let Brooke go ahead and talk about all that.
Overall, we did okay with our computer skills and the kids actually taking the test. The one stumbling block we did come across was with our second grade group, because they do fall into a range where we can choose to give them the K2 test or the 2-5 test. So we went for it, we gave them the 2-5 test, and so our incoming second graders had reading passages like this on the screen, and it was just too much for them. So then we went back and gave all the students the K2 test instead. But they're testing two different things. The K2 test is testing skills, are kids ready to begin reading? And then the 2-5 test is testing their actual reading skills and comprehension. So I have a feeling that in the future, we're probably going to identify some students, like, are you a fluid reader? And we'll give those students the 2-5 test, and then if they're emerging readers, we'll give them the K2 test. But that will always skew our second grade data a little bit, just based on that. But if we're truly looking at it as a tool to decide how to instruct each individual student and in each classroom, that is the right way to go, to differentiate the testing process for those students.
K2 test, the kids wear headphones, and the test is read aloud to them on the screen, and then they choose an answer. The 2-5 test, there is no reading. They have to do it all on their own.
At the secondary level, we were going through it, most grades were pretty close to the national. However, one of the things we caught from looking at, especially the 9th grade and 11th grade, and this throws a flag up we're concerned about their effort, was that they actually went backwards from the fall from the winter. And so, looking at that, we went and looked at, which again, we mentioned in one slide, about how they record how much time is spent on the testing. And so we went back and we looked at it, we had some students who are pretty good students who did not spend a lot of time on it. So I sat down with some of those students and asked, what's the deal here? And they said, well, why are we doing this? What's the point? What is it in it for me to do this test? And so we looked at that, we talked to some of the students, and I talked to some of the staff. And as Melissa said, that there, in proctoring this, there were some issues, especially in the winter term. We were looking at it, we were trying to do the testing so it wouldn't interrupt classes as much. So we were only trying to do one classroom at a time. So they again, not to interrupt too much time during the school day. So we're using this lab right here. E2020 was going on here. We wanted to keep the computer lab open at 139 so the other classrooms could use it. When we found it here, that was pretty distracting for the students that are trying to do the testing. As well as we decided, you know what, it's better we think to test the students in the larger groups so they're all doing it once, and then this is kind of just locked up on its own. And so the next time you're doing the testing, a couple things. Number one, again, this is going to be just testing alone, and then E2020 is going to be down 139 for the testing to eliminate a lot of those distractions. And number two, we had a discussion with the math and the English teachers in regards to incentives, is that they have the mean for each grade level. And their teachers were in agreement that if the kids reach the national mean writ, that those students don't have to take the final exam this semester in math and English in those grade levels, to give them an incentive for that. And again, talking with the students, they were pretty happy about that. We expected that would give us more of a real indicator of where our students are. Because I said, I think these first two sessions it did. The other thing that we need is, and we looked at this when we had our data negotiations, the meeting time for teachers really decreased. And that really took away from looking at the data and looking at these reports. And for a secondary level, we recognize that, and that's one of the things we're going to address for next year, is because they have to have time to look at these reports, know what they mean. Not only that, but making sure that the kids know what they mean. Because again, one of the things we're going to change for this final assessment that we're going to give in the spring is making sure the kids know what the score is and what their target is. Making sure they know that target. Because again, I don't think a lot of them, I don't think they do, to be honest. And we need to provide that, especially next year, that the teachers know those reports, knows what those scores mean, and go from there. But I think with those changes in testing and giving the kids incentive, that will change the scores that we have.
Did the students feel that we're tired of taking testing all the time?
Of course.
I mean, that's the one thing that we always worried about was that we're testing. We're spending so much time on a test that we're not actually teaching them. We're just teaching them how to take the test.
Bigger groups, just to kind of get them in here, get them done quick, so we can rip the Band-Aid off instead of just dragging out forever. That was part of the problem. It was dragging out and taking so long. Because like, especially in the winter, we had snow days, and it took how long did that second session take? It took forever to get it completed and done. And I agree. I think they get that feeling. But if they know that there's some incentive to them and they actually know why we're doing it, that'll give them some onus to it. And especially at the secondary level. A lot of times in elementary, you can tell teachers to do it. Just do it. It's secondary level. Well, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this?
So ours are much easier to. But I think we have to look at what type of testing we're doing, and like MSTEP and SAT, those are once a year. They're really mastery level testing. It's not giving us any instructional data. It's that one quick shot of however that day is going, where this is more, this is your child's progress, this is where they're at. There's lots on here for educators. The handout I gave you was all the different reports that we can pull and run, because I think it's important, you know, at a district level, at a classroom level, and then at an individual level, how it can be used for special ed. Now, parents and students, how do we communicate that out to them? This year, we did this report and went over it with the parents. And it was pretty straightforward. So the blue column is how the students scored in the fall. The orange column is how the district level mean, how did they perform as compared to the district. And then the yellow column is the national norm. So you can see at a quick glance, are we where we need to be? Again, in the winter, how they did. And then this is the projected for the end. So they're saying students on this track that started here and went here should attain here if they're staying on this trajectory, as all other students nationally have. It gives them the percentiles, so they scored better than like 62% of the nation here and 46% of the nation. So 46% of the nation in the fall, 62% in the winter. It kind of gives you those ranges of error in there as well. And then it does the same thing. So this is math and this is reading. And then it breaks it down. I know this is hard to see, but it says operations and algebraic thinking, they're average. Measurement and data, they're high average. So you can start to see when you come down here, this is the informational text key ideas, and I can't read, but it says low average. And so it's a quick glance for parents to see, how is my child doing? Are they where they need to be as compared to their peers within district, as compared to the national norms? And it gives us that quick reference to, are we where we need to be, or are we seeing gross differences?
Now, is this online for the parents to get at, or did they receive it?
We gave it out at report cards, so every time we do a testing, we send it home with the report card. So parent-teacher conferences, we gave the first one in the fall. And we talked to the parents about the fact that this was new, and to bear with us as we...
So we didn't get the second one, right?
Huh?
We didn't get the second one?
No, because we just finished, so it'll come home in this report card, coming out here.
Well, I got the second one from Brook School, so I wasn't like really sure.
Oh, no, yeah,
Okay.
we'll get it home with this time, and then there'll be the final one and the final report card, so that way if parents have questions, they can talk to their.
In high school, we're going to send home with the third testing is inflatables that help their world, their kids, yeah.
Is the whole thing done on a computer?
Yes.
It really does mirror what the M-STEP is, the type of questions. It's not just all multiple choice, it's highlighting, it's that click and drag and drop, it's number lines where they're plotting and pointing.
Do they have to write any kind of narrative or anything, or it's just all?
In the reading section, there is some, there's some short responses, but it's not, but the M-STEP is moving away from that. They're gonna have one long writing piece, but then they're moving away from short responses and things like that, so. It's more like going back and highlighting the evidence in a text than them typing it out all. But this changes as our assessment changes too, so they didn't.
Just a couple takeaways from not only the presentation, but the ongoing conversations we've had about NWEA and, you know, as you can see, and I mean, this is just scratching the surface, and then you start to look at the reports. It's a wonderful tool, and it's as comprehensive as you're gonna get. And the nice part about this, and it kind of answers your question, Ray, a little bit, because, yeah, testing, at some point, when do you instruct? And I think the nice part about NWEA is it does give you that information about where we should be starting that instruction, what point they're at, and also kind of what skills they need to be tested on or be instructed on. That's a nice piece. The second piece, and Ryan kind of hit on it, we gotta get teachers some time to look at these scores because they get the data and they, first of all, I mean, we're in the stage right now where, you know, my administrators are picking up, they understand more about the data. Now we gotta get the teachers and then let them be able to explain and understand what those numbers mean. And that all takes time, we know that. And so one of the things that we've discussed, and even when we're looking at the structure of our next school year, how do we free up some of this time? How do we get some more professional development days or in-service days or even half days? We had, like they had alluded to, the day-to-day a week or so back, and it was wonderful. You know, you had teachers that were, you know, from each level, high school, middle school, all the way down to the elementary teachers, were able to sit in the same room and talk about some of these things that we really need to start doing, but we need more of that. So that'll be one of our goals when we start looking at the calendar for next year. How do we build in some of this time so our teachers have the opportunity to look at their students' data, and, you know, it gives them a little shot in the arm too. Am I being effective? What are my kids scoring? How are they scoring? Are they making growth? Because I think that's really one of the things right there that drives a lot of our instruction is, you know, these teachers want their kids to do well. But again, this is a tool, they understand it, and I think it's going to be good for us. We just need to get a grasp on all the stuff that we're looking at, I think.
And that's what we hear from staff. There's so much information in here, they're almost overwhelmed. Digest it all.
Thank you all very much.
Consent agenda.
I make a motion that the Board of Education approves all consent agenda items, including agenda, minutes, personnel items, and treasurer's report bills as listed items A through C.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? I was looking.
I have one question about.
Yep.
Talked about the other day, if you could explain, just so that everybody's aware and that the public is aware of these checks that are going out, what they are, and just if you can go from there, Al.
Sure. If you've been following the papers at all, back in 2010, in an effort to fix our retirement system, 3% started mandatorily being deducted from each teacher, each administrator, actually the entire staff. That money was the state. There was, right at the get-go, there was some controversy about if that was a mandate, if they were able to do that, and so that money went into escrow. They never touched it. It sat there, and so they took it out for a period. Dorothy, 26 months, or is that right in that range?
Yes.
Yeah, about just over 2 years they had taken that out, and the money sat there and sat there, and the Michigan Education Association battled this in court for years and years and years, and I think educators knew that at some point, or were at least hopeful that at some point that money would come back, and so finally the Supreme Court ruled on that, that money would be refunded. So the checks that you see there, Chuck, those are all going back to former employees who maybe forgot about that money and got a little bonus, and current employees, anybody that was employed during that time. So it was a nice little check. It looks like we're paying out a lot of bonuses, but that's their money they're getting back. So, but that's when you see all that money going out, Chuck, that's what that was from.
Yep, great.
Okay. Good.
$530,000.
$530,000 for our district.
Wow. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Information items, Mr. Latos.
Yep. Ryan,
Yep, a couple things here. First of all, just some athletic news. First of all, our 8th grade volleyball girls, they were undefeated for the regular season, or BWAC champs. A lot of these same girls were on the basketball team that was also BWAC champs earlier, and so these girls are doing an outstanding job. They unfortunately lost in the finals to Emily City over the weekend in the tournament, but they had a great season. Boys baseball started, they're 2-0. So we found out today, Mitch sent us a text that they mercy Marine City today, 11-0, so they're off to a good start. Nice this morning, Officer Ferraro started today as our liaison officer, and was making the rounds, was in the classrooms, visiting kids, and it's just jumped right in, and we're really looking at building this program. We're already talking about next year about him running a seminar with the kids, and then eventually actually build that to possibly being a CTE level law enforcement class here at the high school. So just the nice is that it's very broad on what we can do with this, and he's as excited as we are to be here. Kids are excited about it. They were coming up to him, and it just kind of builds that rapport. So it's nice. It's really nice to have him here. Today we did our PSAT, SAT, pre-admin, filling out the answer sheet form one day, which we continue to do, and then said that Tuesday, as soon as we get back, we get right to the big testing, PSAT and SAT on Tuesday, and then workies on that Wednesday for the juniors. And then starting the Monday we get back, we start the M-STEP right from the get-go. And as I said with the NWA, again, this library is going to be locked out from all the students except for testing. To get that done, again, to eliminate as many distractions as we can to make the situation the best for the kids as possible. Top 10 for our graduating class was determined, and I let them know at the end of last week. Our top 10 for the seniors is Madeline Meldrum, Hannah Stickler, Samantha Tarakian, Sophia Gerlando, Brianna Appleton, Daniel Brezhnik, Kyle Allen, Jade Schwartz, Thomas Hindy, and Trent Treppa. And with the formula, again, it's not only looking at their GPA, but also their honor classes that they take, as well as their SAT scores. And with that combination, the highest score was Madeline Meldrum, so she'll represent us for the best and brightest.
Oh, wow.
So with that, that's all.
thank you. Cool. Brooklyn.
Well, the PTO puts on a book fair for Algonquin and Millside twice a year, and we just finished up our book fair. It was very, very successful in book building, which is a win-win because it kind of proves to us that we're getting kids more excited about reading, and the more money they spend, the more money we get back to spend on books. And Heather chairs that for us, and one night we had so much money, her and I were like counting after 5 p.m. all the money. Tomorrow, Dan Lowers will be in reading to our 4th grade classes. He met them when they took the trip to Lansing last month and reached out and asked if he could come read to them tomorrow. So he'll be starting there at about 10 o'clock and reading only to the 4th grade classes for reading month. We had our engineering night. It was first snowed out, so then we were able to reschedule. It went pretty well. The kids had fun. Robotics team was really awesome and exciting there. So I think that got some of our students more excited and interested in participating in something like that. Also, our Science Olympiad team performed or competed this past weekend. We had a first place for ping pong propulsion, Aubrey Hanners and Audrey Bendit. We had another 8th place ping pong propulsion. That was Mariah Wilson and Nick Postman. We had a 3rd place grasp a graph, Ian Avers and Thomas Avers. And a 4th place Zoe estimation, which was also Aubrey Hanners and Audrey Bendit. So they will compete one more time in May for, like the big deal there, and they're excited about that. And our next up focus is going to be the M-STEP, just like Brian said, we're busy in the front office. PTO allows us to buy snacks for the kids, so, kind of break it up for them, give them a little jolt if they need it on their break. We're counting out mints, sharpening pencils, and we should be ready to go as soon as we get back.
Thank you. Melissa?
Right. At Millside, we just had our Leader New Coaching Day this past last week on Friday, which went really well. It was nice to have somebody come down and take a look at what we're doing and how that's going to benefit us. It is March's Reading Month, and we also had a family night. The kids have kind of chosen the theme of animals for all of their reading, for all the things that they're doing. So they did have an animal magic show, which they learned new things about animals as well as taking home some books from that. So it was a fun night for all, very well attended. We had lots of families out that night, which was wonderful. The entire K-6 staff went through the ALICE training following the high school training, so they are all trained at this point. I also know that the kitchen staff has been recently trained, I believe last week as well. So hopefully we're getting about everybody on board there. PTO sponsored Mother-Son Dodgeball, again, big event. It always amazes me the competitiveness of some of our moms that come out. A lot of fun that night, though. Pictures were super cute. And the kindergarten, first grade Lighthouse team will go to the Rotary meeting this Wednesday. A couple of the representatives to present their thank yous for all the help that Rotary gave for our spaghetti dinner. So they're very nervous about speaking in front of the Rotary, but also very excited. So I hope they do more talking so I don't have to do this. But we'll let you know how that goes. On the curriculum side, we did have our data day, which we've mentioned. Lots of great conversation and exchanging, looking at data and where we are, where we need to go. How do we tweak our curriculum for where it's at and where is our focus? They discussed professional development needs, K-11, through a teacher's perspective, some things they need in order to make this data more meaningful for them, to be able to use it more often, and talk about next steps, really identifying some power benchmarks in each grade for mastery. There's so many standards that need to be covered in every grade. It's impossible to get to mastery of all of them, so really where's our focus in a lot of these grades. So we're going to be working on that as a district. Brian and Brooke are preparing for the state testing. They're getting their schedules in order. Teachers are getting that final test prep in as we get back from spring break. Kindergarten roundup numbers are trying to be finalized. We're trying to dig them out. Right now we're in the 80s, mid-80s, so hopefully if you know anybody, please send them my way. We're sure trying. And recently, Brooke and I were able to go on a county instructional rounds day-to-day for a bright spot in our county, which is Avoca Elementary, to see what they're doing out there and what their process looks like. We spent a lot of time taking notes, kind of checking everything out to see what they have in place and how it differs from what we have in place. Just a few of the highlights. They're very systematic, K-5. So a lot of their rooms resemble the same things. They have a lot of the same pieces in place as they go through. Their learning targets are on the board every day, very focused, very clean. So Brooke and I talked about how do we shore some of that up between our two buildings so that way our processes are in place starting in kindergarten all the way through, and what that might look like for us to see some changes that we can make.
Thank you. Doug?
Good evening. This past Saturday, actually, our staff went through the ALICE training, so I think that kind of completes all the buildings being trained. And some of the staff from the other buildings that didn't have had the opportunity to go to their building training, joined us also over at Point Trumbull. Today we received the grant that we wrote from MEMIC. So one of the representatives from the MEMIC Foundation actually brought that to us, and we had the opportunity to kind of chat a little bit about Algonac and what we do in our building, which was a great opportunity for Caroline and I to make that connection with the MEMIC Foundation. On April 21st, we will be having our annual Kite Day to celebrate early childhood education. That'll be from 10 to 12 noon. From 9 to 1, we will be having a mom-to-mom sale and our summer program registration. And our licensing consultant finally showed up. She's delayed herself numerous times because of special investigations, thank God not here. And so she did stop in to talk to us about some of the classrooms that were reopened or currently in use prior to my employment with the district. There were some concerns that these classrooms at Point Trumbull were not licensed by the state. And so that was kind of a no-no. And when I mentioned that to the licensing consultant when I was hired, she said she was aware of it and that at some point she would meet with me. So that was just recently. And as a result of her coming out and resurveying the classrooms that were already being used, we've had to shift some of our staff to student ratios around, as well as the age groups in some of the classrooms. So 3 of the classrooms are actually getting changed in the building to resemble the needs and demands of the population we're serving. So they'll get rearranged over spring break and the students will come into a new classroom in the building. Also though, with that being said, we were able to increase the overall license number in the building. So we went from 163 students allowed at a time to I believe 197 or 192. It's one of the two. I'm still waiting for the final report. So with that being said, I'm a little less leery about the summer program at Latchkey. We were a little concerned that based on her observation of the old library at Point Trumbull, she was going to limit us, and it sort of did limit us, but she gave us some alternatives to make sure that we are able to meet the needs of having 45, sometimes 50 Latchkey kids in there a day. So I'm confident that that meeting went well, and this is a licensing renewal year, and she made sure to note that and point out several things that need to be addressed, and some things she made me address right then and there with her. So we look forward to that in the fall. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Board reports. I have a quick one, a congratulatory one. MASB sent a couple of letters in here, addressed them to Mr. Latos, but regarding 2 of our board members that achieved level 1 certification in the award of merit, and that would be Heather Neil Roberts and Phil Clark. So congratulations. The training that Phil and Heather have completed, and most of the rest of us have at least had some, and if not all of it, is very important. Trained leaders are effective leaders, and congratulations for moving in that direction.
Not to be a stickler, but I think we got level 2.
You already done with level 2?
Level 1 and 2, yeah.
Hmm? Sweet. Well,
Better yet.
but I don't have the letter about it yet.
That's the award of, yeah, that's the level 2.
Says level 1 and award of merit.
Yeah,
Which is level 2.
Which is level 2.
Okay.
We're all over it.
There you go. That's good. That's all I have. Anyone else? You.
Oh, to me?
Make
Okay.
it snappy.
As Ryan mentioned, Dave Fajardo started this morning. Little information that some may or may not know as we talked about entering into a contract with Clay Township. The nice part of it is Clay Township Board and their group was kind enough to, we will be doing a year contract at a time, but that won't start until July. So between now and the end of the school year, it's on their dime.
Sweet.
So that's a nice little trial, if you will, for in terms of what we get with Dave. But no, we're excited. It's going to be a good arrangement. And I just, like I said, Ryan mentioned it, the amount of things that we're talking to. It's like, it's almost like sometime you get a new toy or something. You're so excited. You got all these things you want to do. And, I just think we got to slow down and let Dave get acclimated here, but he does such a good job interacting with the kids. I just think
Well,
it's.
if he's gone one day, you have somebody else that fills in.
Now, you know, we talked a little bit about that. If he was gone for a stretch, if he was on a vacation, they would send somebody in his place. But, you know, if he's just on a call, or if he's, you know, not on a call necessarily, but even if he's got a training he has to go to for a day, you know, we would just do without on that day.
For a meeting, he had a
Yep.
meeting today. I saw him today, I stopped by, and he was just getting ready to leave to go to a meeting, and this guy is like really excited about this whole thing. He was having a good time, and he's really enjoying it, so I think that's a good thing. I was speaking with one of the Clay Township trustees at an event recently, and an individual told me that they would like to see Clay Township figure out a way to make something happen where it didn't cost the district anything. So I don't know what the discussions at the township level will be about that, but that was kind of a nice thing to hear, you know.
I'm all about that. That's
Well, yeah, said, you know,
Hopefully the
yeah.
state comes across.
Yeah,
with
so
Right.
it would be nice too.
So-
Yep.
And you know, this whole program is it's not something. This wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to any of the things in the last couple of months. We had a resource officer here back in the 90s, right, in the 2000s, and because the state gave grants to municipalities and to school districts to fund that, and then when those grants expired, it was just some reason the state decided to not redo those, and the officers just kind of faded away. So, and I know we've been talking about doing stuff ever since then. So, yeah.
Al, do you envision him maybe coming to a board meeting or something so we could meet him, or?
Yep, absolutely. He'd love to. Yep. He had, we definitely will get him here. I know he had class tonight. He teaches a class up at the college, law enforcement class. I know he was tied up today, but I know he'd like to get in a meeting, so I certainly will get him out here for us. Yep.
He's a very busy guy. I mean, he's got a lot of irons in the fire. That
Yep.
is for sure.
I will be able to, he's going to join me and Mitch Landrum tomorrow. We are, Jeff Freeland is coming down from the county. You might know the name. He's our emergency manager up there in terms of, you know, threats and any kind of homeland security or any kind of security issues. Jeff's going to come down. And basically, he's going to be talking about threat assessments for the district. They want to go through and they want to do some of the buildings within the districts, different districts in the county. And basically, it's he'll come through and with his team and basically give you an assessment of how safe you are and where your areas of concern are. It's confidential. It'll be between us and them in terms of things that they feel are any weaknesses that we have or areas that they think we could improve and how we would do that. So it'll be interesting to see. I think, you know, it's something that I'm excited about. They'll be coming down. I think it's at the end of June that they'll be doing it, but he wants to come down tomorrow and talk a little bit about how they're going to prepare for that. So I'll keep you posted on that one. Continuing to get out and inform the community to the best of my ability about the sinking fund that's coming up in May. My travels took me to Clay Township and Algonac last week to their meetings, tomorrow to the Historical Society. And then I've got a couple more that are scheduled for the following week after that, so I'm gonna continue to get out there and try to get the word out. Most of the response I've got has been very positive. I think people are on board. I think people are seeing the need, and I just think, like last time, it's about we need to get people out and make sure that we stick with it and get people out to vote for that. So,
What were some of the things you mentioned, like in the next month or so, was a big community marketing campaign? Do you see signs or any specifics?
There's a committee out there, Citizens for Student Success, that's out there. I know they've got some things that, you know, that are, I've actually been over there and talked with some of them. They've got some neat things planned. I know Ryan has a parent group over here at the high school that's kind of gone off, and they've got a nice Facebook page. If you go on there and take a look at it, there's some positives going out there that way, and then certainly all the informational stuff that we continue to get, we'll make sure that we get it out as well. So I think some good stuff coming. I've spoke with Lisa Liberto a little bit regarding negotiation time coming soon. We usually try to sit down around March, April, and into May when we know kind of what our staffing needs are going to be and kind of know a little bit about where we sit financially before we sit down and start to have those discussions. But we are probably going to start looking at maybe doing some informal kind of stuff at one point here pretty soon, just to talk about items that we're going to talk about later, I guess is probably the best way to put it. But so we've got that on the docket. I think we'll, like I said, probably looking next month, we'll start to do some of those things. The last thing I have is just, I think that my plan after you heard the Neola presentation today, I think it'd be good for the board to discuss if that's the direction we want to go. So I think what I'll do is next month it'll show up on the agenda as an informational item so we could discuss it. And then you guys can kind of guide me from there as far as if that'll be coming for an action item at some point or what direction we want to go with that. But I'll put it on next month for information. That's it, Andy.
Okay, thank you. Cash borrowing. I guess that's a Dorothy thing.
It is a Dorothy thing.
I am currently working with OMBA, and we both confer that we do have to borrow 1.8 million again. Until we have about 15% that we still have to borrow. So an action item will come before the board next month to borrow again for April, a resolution, and then in May. And in June, we will receive the money. We'll pay the money back, and we'll borrow again.
So it's an information item now, and next month we'll have it for an action item, resolution, correct? Okay.
About the same as what we borrowed last year?
We borrowed 2 million last year, 1.8 this year. Trune has to look at it yet. Two of us confer 1.8, and it goes to Mr. Emery.
Okay. Food service contract, who's that, you or him?
This is for information item.
Oh, great.
As well, it will come before the board next month for action. NDE has approved the year 4 of the Chartwell's contract. And so that was step 1, and step 2 is the board approval of year 4 next month.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? All right.
I see they added to contract and management fee again. 2% every year. Yes, that's just a little burr in my behind.
Transportation RFP update.
You could see the dates and the process that we've been following. Obviously, Dean will be back making a bid. We have been contacted by another group as well that's showing some interest, and it has kind of inquired about what it is that we provide through our transportation here. And that's always kind of the catch on some of these that you put out for bid, and sometimes people come in with different bids, and so it's kind of like the whole, if it looks too good to be true, sometimes it is, because sometimes people miss a few things that you currently have in place. So but we'll make sure that those are thorough bids. And like I always bring up the one where the last time we bid out, there was a bunch of, there were some that were less, some that were more, whatever the case was. And then but when you look back, the things that were provided were things like a supervisor out there. Well, that's a pretty big expense. And if you look through, one didn't have that as part of theirs where others did. So we just got to make sure that we go through it in detail, and that, you see the timeline right there. you know, we are basically at this point okay until the end of the school year is where we, June 30th is when we expire. So, I mean, we've got time, we've got it out early enough to where we can make sure that we give everyone a fair chance to go ahead and bid on that. I don't know, Dorothy, anything that you wanted to add?
Questions that are, any inquiries that our possible prospects have, they are all posted out there on the website under the transportation RFP. So we have to publicly answer any questions they should ask.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Visitors and their requests? None. Action items. Board policy revision 8320 tobacco products.
I make a motion that the Board of Education approves the revision of Board Policy 8230 tobacco products.
Support?
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Isn't this just to more narrow down and clarify vaping?
Probably covers the
electronic? I mean,
yep.
it was probably, the way I understand it, it was probably covered under our policy anyway, but this just kind of spells it out and puts some brass tacks in
Yep.
there for us, right? Is that right? Okay.
Good article today in the Detroit News, if you get home and want to take a look online, that addressed vaping and kind of just was a real good, pretty comprehensive article that talked a little bit about how schools are handling it and kind of how some of the misconceptions that our young people have about what vaping is and some of those types of things. And the reality of it is there's several of them out there that do not view it as, you know, as a form of smoking or whatever. There's some I think some miscommunication, maybe some misinterpretation. So something that we've talked about of maybe doing some education for some of our younger ones too, and letting them, you know, understand the right way or understanding what the right answer to some of those things are. So.
Anything else? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Overnight trip requests. Number 1, baseball Coopersville tournament.
Make a motion that the Board of Education approves the overnight trip request for the varsity baseball team to travel to Coopersville High School for a baseball tournament on May 11th and 12th, 2018. The overnight stay and transportation will be provided by parents and coaches. There will be no cost to the district for this trip.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Been moved and supported. All those in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have a good night. Try and stay warm, Chuck.